Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Wednesday, November 5th, 2025. Today, we are talking about if our gardens are contaminated enough to be concerned about it, anxiety versus farming, and wood chips as a bed mulch. So let's do it. All right. Happy Wednesday, everyone. I hope you all are doing well and that the middle of the week is this week is something to celebrate for you. Given the topic yesterday about livestock and some of the challenges with keeping them, I kid you not, I went down to harvest some lettuce only to find a random and giant pig there. Happily munching away in the compost pile. We have a neighbor who keeps pigs, and this one had evidently found its way to freedom and then to the compost pile. So yeah, pig escapes being prime among the reasons I don't really miss trying to keep them in while also full-time market gardening. I remember several times coming home from the market exhausted and seeing the pigs missing from their paddocks and having no idea where they were. Don't miss that feeling a lot. I did enjoy the visit though yesterday. Pigs are awesome, as long as they are in the compost and not in our gardens, of course. Two quick things. Don't forget that the Composter podcast starts today. In fact, I think the episode is already out. So if you are not subscribed to Jane's podcast, the Composter podcast, we will link it in the show notes. I was honored that she asked me to be the first guest of the season, and we had a blast chatting. I always do with Jane. She's the best. So check that out wherever you get your podcasts. Also, yesterday, we challenged you to still keep sending in your 20-second farm video clips, obviously, but with a twist. This month, we want your garden dishes. Send in a 20-second video clip of something you made from the garden to farmermike@notillgrowers.com. Looking forward to seeing those. All right, so changing gears, let's talk wood chips today, but not as a pathway mulch as we did recently. Let's discuss these as a surface mulch, like right there on the top of the bed. Now, to some extent, wood chips seem like the absolute perfect mulch. They come with very little risk of weed seed, though sometimes they can bring some invasives, but more often than not, they are clean. Contamination-wise, although wood chips from heavily sprayed areas like orchards or golf courses can contain some chemical residue, you are more likely than not to just get healthy, clean wood chips. Trash can be an issue, but a minor one compared to syringes and underwear that I found in compost. That's a true story. Wood chips are also slow to decompose, which makes them a longer lasting mulch than others. Wood chippers, orchardists, etc. will often happily bring them straight to you, and wood chips are just a ton of nutrient-rich carbon. So what's not to love? Or more to the question of the day, why should or shouldn't we use this material as a mulch on our garden beds? Well, there is a place for mulching with wood chips, but it has to be really well thought out in terms of how they are employed. First, fresh wood chips should never be worked into the soil if you hope to use that soil within the next arbitrarily like 6 months. This is because the wood chips will, for quite a while, lock the nitrogen up in the soil all for themselves for a short time. Basically, it's actually the microbes doing that. The microbes get distracted by this giant new food source, so much of the soil's nitrogen is used by those microbes to decompose the wood chips versus growing your veggies. Now, if you lay those wood chips on the surface, does the same thing happen? Well, yes, but to a much lesser extent. They will indeed lock up some nitrogen within a few inches of where they touch, but not quite as much as if they were worked into the soil. Now, that doesn't mean wood chips won't still affect plant growth, either through the tannins and such that they leach when it rains, the fresh wood chips do, or through that locking up of the nitrogen, or a combo of the two. If you just use fresh wood chips as your mulch, expect year one to be a bit rough in the garden. If you layer some good compost underneath of those wood chips, however, then you are likely to experience a much better season. In fact, this is also the recommendation of the proponents of the quote-unquote back to Eden gardening, that you layer compost first, lasagna style, which I think is often overlooked in when people talk about this. Basically, you have to put down a layer of compost for it to be effective. In that situation, you may struggle with some of the more shallow-rooted crops, but the deeper stuff should go largely unaffected. Now, we don't use wood chips as a mulch with or without compost in our annual gardens, but what we have done to decent success is use like year-old wood chips as a mulch around longer season crops, or we've purposely composted the wood chips with some added nitrogen, specifically blood meal, but it could be whatever, to create a pretty nice mulching compost. Basically layers of wood chips, then sprinkling in the nitrogen, watering it, and then repeating layer by layer. Then that heats up and composts, and you get a nice rough surface mulch, or what I like to call a mulching compost. I'm not as concerned with what the wood chips are made of, like cedar or walnut or whatever. If it was cedar, I may be a little bit more hesitant because it's so rot resistant. But by and large, I'm not concerned about different naturally derived chemicals within the tree species, save for maybe like poison ivy or poison oak. So at least while they are fresh, I try not to handle any wood chips without gloves, just for fear of maybe there being some poison ivy in there. Most of what comes to us when people drop off wood chips is a mix of tree species, which I prefer just on like the nutrient and diversity side of things. Around perennials is an area where I'm largely okay with using fresh wood chips. I typically just steer clear of placing them too heavily up against the tree or shrub, etc., just in case you get like some sort of fungal disease there. And also anywhere that I'm growing lettuce, I'm not likely to put wood chips anywhere near there just because I don't like having wood chips inside of my lettuce mix. Same thing with leaves. Leaves and wood chips, they're kind of in the same family. Anyway, what say you all? Any clever ways you've figured out how to utilize wood chips on the bed surface? Obviously, they can be excellent in pathways in certain situations, which I've discussed recently. Like I've discussed before, that you can maybe mix them with some high nitrogen composts like chicken manure on the bed surface to create an eventual plantable surface. But as a surface mulch in general, just on their own, it just gets a little complicated. It's going to suck up a little of that nitrogen. Stuff may not perform as well as you want. That sort of thing. So let us know. And otherwise, we're going to take a quick break and then talk some general garden contamination, whether we should be concerned. Ooh, BRB. And look who came back today. Hi, buddy. What are we doing? I mean, it's hard to describe how big this animal is. You don't know how big this compost pile is, but that's the building behind it. So, yeah. Hi, buddy. Yeah. Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. Farmers who partnered with Farmhand say they grew an average of 63% this year because it's more than software. Farmhand is your business coach and assistant, helping to sell out, save time, and grow smarter with real data from real farms, shaping websites that convert, campaigns that sell, and fulfillment systems that run smoothly. Curious what that looks like? Meet the founder, Ari, at farmhand.partners/no-till and see the same insights and support the fastest growing farms rely on every week. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. Today's episode is also brought to you by Johnny's Selected Seeds. Johnny's Selected Seeds is a proud supporter of Growers Daily. At Johnny's, they do more than sell seeds. They grow them. They trial them to see how they perform on Johnny's research farm in Maine and across the U.S. and Canada. Only the best varieties are added to their catalog and website. When you need proven varieties you can count on and detailed guidance from seedling to harvest, consider Johnny's your trusted growing partner. JohnnySeeds.com. That's JohnnySeeds.com. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener or viewer, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Andy, who writes, quote, "Hey Jesse, Andy here from Rootcraft near Brighton in the UK. Go Seagulls. I am a longtime follower of NTG and had fun explaining to the Department of Work and Pensions last week how I could justify my monthly donation as a legitimate work expense. I just told them you rock. Thanks, Andy. On to my question. Do you think it is possible that having sort of local, organically produced vegetables for myself and my daughter over the last 15 years, while hopefully avoiding the consumption of pesticides and synthetic fertilizers as much as possible? Due to production methods deemed permissible in organic production, we may have inadvertently consumed more microplastic in our diet. Do you consider this paranoia, or could this be quite possible? P.S. I think what I'm asking is, when we talk about microplastics in the soil, just how micro, or do we even know? Small enough to enter the vascular tissue of vegetables we harvest and consume? I'm done now. Thank you. Little prayer emoji, end quote. All right, obviously, first of all, indeed, go Seagulls. One of these days, I will finally make my way over to England and get to see my boys play at the Amex in person and hang out with my maybe, 10 Brighton supporting farmer friends. We're a small but mighty collective. Also, shouts to us being a legit business expense. I think we are, but maybe I'm a little biased. Anyway, great question. And the thing that needs to be said about microplastics is, well, a few things. One, we don't really know that much yet. Not really. We know they exist. We know they are in absolutely everything. They are found in the placenta and basically every part of the body. They are found in microbes themselves, in what we call nanoparticles. So we don't really know the scope, the effects. We have some some indications, but we're not really sure how big the concern is. It's not great, but how not great? That's still a bit of a question. However, number two, the big thing we do know is that most of the microplastics we consume are not coming from food. They are in there, no doubt, and we all have consumed microplastics without question, but the majority of the microplastics we consume are not likely coming from our gardens. Yes, there is pretty good evidence that plants can take up microplastics out of the soil, as they have been found in the plants themselves. Like I said, to answer that part of the question, the xylem, the leaves, the fruit, all of it, broccoli, tomatoes, everything. But foods that we know contain a lot of microplastics are honestly things like seafoods. The sea is massively contaminated right now, and not only is the plastic in the sea contaminating our seafood, but also our air as the sea churns and shoots the floating micro and nanoplastics into the air we breathe. Plastic fibers in our clothes also shed into the air, which we regularly consume, breathing being something we notably do a little bit more than eating. Also, something we generally, or at least probably should, do more than eating, drinking water. And water is another significant source of microplastics. They are found heavily in tap and bottled water. One study found 83% and 93% of sources checked, respectively. Other sources include our tires on our cars, makeup, any synthetic textiles, toothbrushes, basically everything. So I think our gardens, generally speaking, and thankfully, are probably the least of our concerns in this regard, though they are likely becoming contaminated just like everything else by the environment around them. I guess the thing I always try to stress is that it's the environment. It's the environment, it's the environment, it's the environment. Our health is so incredibly dependent on the environment around us. This has been something I think that has been extraordinarily neglected among all the bloom of health gurus out there, and possibly for obvious reasons. It's much easier, I would say, to tell people just to eat better rather than say, well, we kind of need to change the entire world so that we can be healthy. So I get that. Also, without question, what we eat does have an effect on our health. So that's a fair focus. But we breathe a lot more than we eat. We drink a lot more than we eat. These things have to be taken into consideration. How we treat our environment has a direct impact on our health. And until that fact, big FACT, fact, reaches the mainstream, it's going to be hard to say what the effects of our gardens are on our health, because the health of our gardens is affected by our environment. I do still think that the many, many benefits of growing your food outweigh the risks, even in a situation where you may have some microplastic contamination or something. Moreover, you won't be able to avoid those micro and nanoplastics by getting food from elsewhere either. Not, that is, until we change much of the way the world is run. No big deal. It seems easy enough. Anyway, thoughts from you all. Otherwise, go Seagulls, and we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, anxiety in the farm. It's not related to this particular topic, but not related. Anyway, be right back. Today's episode is brought to you by High Mowing Organic Seeds. High Mowing Organic Seeds is celebrating their 30th anniversary with 47 fabulous new varieties for 2026. Highlights include downy mildew-resistant cucumbers, a poppy that looks like cotton candy, and 12 new tomato varieties. High Mowing offers more than 750 varieties of certified organic, non-GMO vegetables, flowers, herbs, and cover crops, all trialed for optimal performance in organic growing systems. High Mowing has the professional quality seeds and supportive grower reps to get you from seed to harvest. Visit highmowingseeds.com to request a catalog and use code 26NOTILL, all one word, 26NOTILL, for 10% off your order of $100 or more. That's highmowingseeds.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Marble Seed. The Marble Seed Organic Farming Conference attracts a wide range of regenerative and organic farmers for 3 days of skill development and community building. Farmer Drew Kramer said, "Going to Marble Seed was so invigorating at a time when I needed it most. I picked up tools I'm already using." The conference is the final week in February in La Crosse, Wisconsin. Early registration opens December 4th at conference.marbleseed.org. That's conference.marbleseed.org. All right, back to the show. All right, so I'm not particularly good in a crowd. I've probably said this before, but if I have a job, like giving a presentation or selling produce or cheering on my team or whatever, I'm totally fine. I can maybe even excel in that situation. But if I just walk into a room full of people with no particular job to do, it's pretty hard on me. I shut down, I lock up, I get a headache. I don't have panic attacks exactly, though sometimes I do have like miniature ones where my neck sort of locks up and I can't, look up, but I definitely do panic. Hannah knows this about me to the point that sometimes she will find, something for me to do, a job when we go out somewhere to just hang out. Like I'll end up just like washing dishes or something. Or sometimes I will just wander off and play with the kids because I need a job, or I will break down. I've always been that way. I've always struggled pretty mightily with anxiety, even though I had no idea what it was for a long time. Even if there are just a handful of people, I don't always do that well with the basic social stuff, but I don't think that's particularly unusual. I think everyone has their quirks in this way, and for some it's certainly more debilitating than what I go through, and for some it's probably less. I personally can usually survive the situation without incident, even if I don't feel great. I used to think drinking made that easier to manage, and to an extent it did, at least in the moment, except that the next day I would wake up and feel double the anxiety. Anyway, why am I telling you this? Well, one, I don't want every episode of the show to just be dense with farming stuff, so that the farming stuff is actually somewhat digestible. So there's that. But also, I doubt I am the only person who struggles with this. And when I think about the last segment and how much farming has helped my anxiety, the good food, the physical activity, the outdoorsiness of it, the microbes, all the things, I think about how it's done that almost more than anything else I've ever done for my anxiety. I guess part of that is the job itself. I rarely have to enter big rooms with no, job to do. Even at conferences, I'm typically a presenter. I also just think farming and or gardening is good for our health, whether it's something like what I go through or general health issues. I've found such relief in this work. Like I mentioned recently in the live that I did last week, that I could see myself one day quitting the farm business because I'm frankly not the most enthusiastic business person, as you can probably tell, but I could not see myself quitting the act of farming and or gardening. It's been crucial to my balance and my sanity over the last 16 years. And although I'm still not great in a crowd, I can manage better just for the simple fact that I'm healthier and maybe happier than I was before I was farming. Now, that isn't to say running a farm business doesn't create all new anxieties. It does, and you should only start a business once you've thought it through thoroughly via business plan and all the things, especially if you already struggle with something anxiety related, but that it certainly has helped my existing anxieties. I'm sure others can relate to that. I'm sure others have more significant stories of how farming has helped with their health, mental, physical, or otherwise as well. Anyway, what does that bring up for you all? Has gardening/farming helped? Has it made something better, something worse, neutral? Let us know, or just, congrats. Otherwise, that's it for this Wednesday. Don't forget, No Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. You can learn more about how to do that in the show notes. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor a show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music and Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat like the one I'm wearing, or the one that you can assume I'm wearing if you're listening to this, or a copy of the Living Soil Handbook at notillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of November, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Ray B, and Terry Freezor. It's like having Frost as your last name. Like, I feel like it's one of those things that, feels appropriate for being a farmer. Anyway, yes. All right. So shouts to you all for the story fodder today, because today's story is about two people incidentally named Ray and Terry. Now, these two are retired. They live in a retirement facility outside of Atlanta. And this is an ideal retirement home. Like, if I was going to create a retirement home, this is what it would look like. Lots of outdoor sports options with like mini pitches for soccer, courts for tennis or pickleball, shuffleboard, all the things. Plus, obviously gardens and natural areas and, hiking trails and play areas for grandkids, all, just all the things. Anyway, Terry and Ray not only live here, but they were in charge of the gardens. They're the managers. And one day, Ray and Terry, they go out to the gardens to discover a bulldozer parked by them. And when they asked the staff, they were like, yo, what's up? The staff said that it was that the whole property was under new ownership, and that the ownership thinks the garden area is unsightly, and they want to tear down that and the forest and all the things and just for more housing. So Terry and Ray get their funds together and get the donations from other residents, and they buy the retirement facility for themselves. Then Terry tries to bulldoze the tennis courts because he's like really hates tennis. He thinks that pickleball is the thing, and then there's the tennis people and the pickleball thing. It's a whole thing. And anyway, it's a whole, it turns into a massive fiasco. But ultimately, Terry and Ray stay. The gardens and the forests and all the walking trails and all that stuff stays. And Terry and Ray eat glorious tomatoes all summer. Thanks for listening and or watching and or listening and watching simultaneously. Props. We will see you tomorrow for Thursday.